Greetings all, I'm Jonathan Kruk, your storyteller. Here, presenting for the Tompkins Corners Cultural Center, a performance live of Supernatural on the Hudson, spooky stories of our majestic, mysterious river. This is Tom McCoy, providing ambient, atmospheric, and even more than that, with the music. First, an ancient story, the oldest one I know, called Mahikani Tuk. In ancient times, when the weather was as cold as now it is warm, when the days were as short as now they're long, folk would gather round winter fires and tell tales of an enormous giant. Long the giant slept, declared the wise ones. And when this giant slept, against his slumbering form there formed a lake. And long the giant slept. The giant, in his dreams, invited animals to come and live by his lake. And oh, they came. The scurrying squirrel, the slithering snake, the snapping turtle, the stinking skunk, the industrious beaver, the running rabbit, the deer, the wolf, the owl, the eagle, the blue jay, and even the woolly mastodon came to live by the lake formed by the enormous giant. The giant then, in his dreams, invited people to come. And oh, they came. With baskets, they found they could gather nuts, roots, berries, healing herbs, fish. Their baskets always were filled when they went round the giant and his lake. And long the giant slept. The people also discovered they could take in their hands the three sisters, and they could throw them and sit and watch and see Sister Corn grow straight as your arm, and Sister Bean twined round Sister Corn, and Sister Squash spread at their feet on the ground, and long the giant slept. The people were grateful. In the mornings, they would lift up the flap of their wigwam and step out into the glistening sun, seeing it sparkle on the giant's lake. Slanting over his body, they would sing out, "Onewa! Onewa! Onewa!" Long the giant slept. And in the winter, they told stories of when the giant walked round about, his huge feet providing places for the wigwams. The giant settling disputes among the thunder beings. You've heard them, ba-boom, crack-ow! The giant would pick them up and separate them. And long the giant slept. Then it happened, as it does with all things, change came to the giant. Trees grew from his toes, vines twined round his legs, squirrels, snakes drew up them, grass. The three sisters appeared on the giant's bodies. They put longhouses there too, and the giant's head became like a craggy stone where the eagle perched and shrieked. Children even swam in ponds of water, collecting over the giant's sleeping eyes. Little did they know, just below their kicking feet were those slumbering eyes. And long the giant slept. But now when the people came out of their wigwams and looked upon the giant covered with grass and trees and animals and the three sisters and wigwams, they said, "Oh, nay, what? What is that?" "Well, the old ones say it's a giant, but it looks like a hill. Why should we give thanks to a hill?" And they said, "Oh, nay," and stopped giving thanks. And they stopped telling tales in the winter of the giant, so long had he slept. Without a story, without thanks, the giant's heart broke. And heartbroken, no longer would the giant sleep. The giant reached up, cracking a hole in the sky. He shook off the rocks and trees, the animals, the three sisters and wigwams, and stood up. Moving apart his enormous legs, the giant let that long damned lake go, and it rushed and roared and roiled into an ancient riverbed, scouring a course deep into the ocean where the waters met, and the giant vanished. Many of the people and animals got washed away, but those who remained said, "Look what the giant left us. A river. No ordinary river, for it flowed both ways." Thus they called it Mahikanituk, the river that flows both ways. And they learned if they took care of the river that flows both ways, it would take care of them. And thus, even unto this day, they say. So, let's say, Onewa Mahikanituk, for the river that still flows both ways, our majestic, mysterious Hudson River. Thank you for listening to Mahikanituk. One of the mysteries on the Hudson River concerns sailing through the Hudson Highlands. And there, sloop skippers and motorboat enthusiasts do that with good reason. For something supernatural there dwells. Once a new skipper, ordered to sail up Hudson's River, had his crew confront him after they made their way through the expansive Tappan Zee. They say, "Skipper, skipper, we're in the sailmaker's reach." See, back in those days, there were 14 reaches you would have to reach in order to make and wend your way from New York City up to Albany. Sailmaker's Reach near Haverstraw Bay proved daunting, but worse was what would lie ahead, Martyr's Reach. "Skipper, we'll never get to Martyr's Reach unless you tip your hat." "Pray, what are you talking about?" "The imps at Donderberg." Now those of you who live in Putnam Valley know of a Donderberg, but this is the Donderberg above Tompkins Cove, not Tompkins Corners, across the Hudson River. And there it juts up as a guardian over Peekskill Bay. There, the crew admonished, "Tip your hat, skipper." "Why? The imps." "What, pray tell, are imps?" Skipper, from the days of John Coleman, who got shot in the neck with an arrow, after he went off from the Half Moon and Henry Hudson, to now, you's gotta tip your hats, or else we'll never get through these Hudson Islands. This boat, this sloop, it'll be sunk at Wild's End off of West Point, and that's where the Hudson River has no bottom. Tip your hat, Skipper. What? Imps? You're talking of ghosts? Ha! My hat stays upon my head. I've sailed across the ocean. Ha ha! I can manage this minor river. But even as the skipper boasted about managing a minor river, upon Donderberg there rose up Dwerg, the Heer of Donderberg, and dare I say, the spirit of John Coleman from Henry Hudson's 1609 expedition, who took an arrow through the neck and became the first of those spirits on the Hudson. He rose up in a sugarloaf hat, trumpet in hand, calling out a clarion, "Doo-doo, doo-doo, what? Doo-doo, what?" Rising up like smoke, like fog, they came, the imps. Look at them quick and you'll think, it's just fog on the Hudson River. But look into them deep and you will see the distorted faces of those who have drowned on the Hudson River and have become ghostly spirits, imps themselves. They gathered round Donderberg, and the Heer of Donderberg, doo-doo, sounded that trumpet, calling out the orders. The imps grabbed hold of gusts of wind and woo, woo. They gyred and gimbled head over heels. They passed by the Timp, Pinjip, Bald and Bear Mountains. They went above West Point and old Crow Nest until they descended into the grove under the shadow of old Storm King, and there dwells the witch of the Hudson Islands, stirring her brew. Imps, you're here for a burst of thunder. I'll provide it if you provide for me the bones of that skipper who will not tip his hat. Well, the imps agreed, and the witch stirred up her brew. Ba-ba-boom, ba-boom. Ba-ba-ba-boom, boom, 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 boom. And like Henry Hudson's men bowling in the Catskills, the thunder reverberated, and the imps pushed the lightning-laden cloud against that sloop with a skipper disrespectful. The wind lashed whitecaps upon our river that flows both ways, and the imps began to peer in the clouds. Bearing down, the crew cried, "Skipper, skipper, tip your hat! Look at them imps! Look at them imps!" But when the skipper looked on the bowsprit, there he saw a distorted little face. And he says, "That's no imp, it's a demon." How do I know what to do about demons? We'll evoke the spirit of St. Herclas, St. Nicholas. He called up all those who were down below on that sloop, passengers from New York to Albany. They came up, wove their fingers together, wild-eyed, they wished, they prayed, even the non-believers. "Oh, Sinterklaas, save our ship! Oh, Sinterklaas! Ba-ba-boom, ba-boom, save our sloop!" Well, the imps cared little for this wish and prayer, and the Heer of Donderberg ordered more thunder and more lightning, and the witch conjured it up. Ha 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 ha! Ba-ba-boom! They lashed that ship with thunder and lightning until everyone on board began to make their wish and prayer inside out and backwards. They said, "Let's get on, yes, that caused our ghostly imps to laugh and laugh and laugh. And they figured laughter would be this sloop's toll to sail through the Highlands, past Poughkeepsie and the Catskills, to Albany. What? The year of Donderberg called off the storm. The imps pushed aside the clouds, and quick as it had come, the sun slanted down, causing the river to sparkle with life. But the skipper had to boast, "Ha! I've seen far worse on the Atlantic Ocean. Why, this was nothing." But 'twas something to the ear of Donderberg, who listened and sent out rather a Bronx cheer. It found its way across the Hudson Islands to the skipper's hat, and it blew it off of his head. And it sent that hat sailing some 40 miles north, where it placed it on a church steeple. Some say, like Washington Irving, 'twas the old Dutch church in Kingston. But others insist, nay, 'twas the church in New Hamburg of St. Nicholas. But where'er that hat went, be sure of this: the next time that skipper got an order to sail up Hudson's River, do you know what he did when he got near Donderberg Mountain in Tompkins Cove, the gateway to the Hudson Islands? Oh, he tipped his hat and gave a bow, respecting those imps who still rule that part of our Hudson River. Why, I've had people come to me and tell me they were there in their sailboat, their motorboat, and they got turned around just below the Bear Mountain Bridge by what? The imps, still ruling that part of the river. You want to sail through there? You'd best do this. Tip your hats to the imps, still ruling our Hudson Highlands. Thank you. Thanks to Tom, too.
Bravo, John.
Good friends, a little pirate tale. Not far from the Tompkins Corners, Creek, near the New Hamburg Church of St. Nicholas, there is a wonderful center now run by an artist known as Alex Gray. But once upon a time, about 100 years ago, an old woman dreamed of Captain Kidd's treasure, buried beneath 2 monstrous beech trees. Around the year 1700, just before Kidd went to London to face charges of piracy when he had been hired to become a privateer, one who would stop pirates for the King of England. But lo, he got into some trouble, too detailed to bring unto you here. But I'll bring you this. His crew said, "Now listen, Captain Kidd, before you goes and turn yourselves in and makes your case in London, we gotta make sure we're gonna keep this treasure. Why, you go with it over to England, King will keep the whole damnable thing. We're gonna bury this treasure. Hey, and we're gonna swear an oath. Hey, hey! That we'll only dig it up together. Hey, hey, ho! And thus, up and down the Hudson River, along the Long Island Sound, from Flushing to Gardiner's Island, from Hell's Gate to Wappingers, treasures got buried grave deep in the ground. And over each one the men would cut their hands and drip some blood and vow, we will only dig this treasure up together. When Kid's name was clear. But alas, Kid's name did not clear. And on a grim day in May 1701, I believe, he faced the noose twice. The first one broke, but the second one sent up his ghost. The body was left dangling over London Bridge, but where did the ghost dwell? Ha! Here along the Hudson. And when the old lady dreamed, the treasure was buried beneath the beech trees. Near New Hamburg, a couple of college students heard her raving about it in a diner. And off they went at night to dig it up. And they had heard that spirits may rouse if you speak thus, like calm. They masked themselves. Perhaps I should have too. Perhaps they should have been all the more masked, for when they dug down grave deep and the shovels scraped across a chest, they heard a guttural sound coming from a rattling chest. Leave my treasure in the ground. Leave my treasure in the ground. Lads climbed out and found an elongated shadow, darker than any night, with two hellish burning embers, and it drew from its side a sword and pointed and menaced, and again warned, leave my treasure in the ground! When morning came, that elderly lady who had dreamed of the location of Captain Kidd's treasure, causing the college students to go to that place to unearth it. She returned to the diner, red-eyed. I've killed those two young men. They're now the guardians of Captain Kidd's treasure. Well, folk went out to verify the lady's story to those two ancient beech trees, which even 100 years ago had lost most of their branches, and they found no evidence of digging, but they found a bucket with a cross made of an axe and a shovel, marking the new grave of the two students who attempted to dig up Kidd's treasure, but were frightened to their doom. And now, even to this day, they guard that treasure. You dare to go and find it. You know where it is. And you'll end up a ghost guarding Kidd's treasure. Best leave the treasure in the ground and tell the tale, as have I. Thank you much for listening to to the tale of Kid's lost treasure in Wappingers. My last tale is George and the Pox. Once there lived a fine young fellow, tall, muscular, and so well-mannered he kept for himself a list of the way in which one should behave, especially before gentlemen and ladies of significance. Always rise when they would walk in, have some kind of compliment, not too honoring or fawning, but have one ready on your lips when they enter. He would often go out and survey the land, and once an adventure came his way. His older brother invited him to travel to the Caribbean. He agreed and went, and there dined with the family, even though a warning had gone out that, well, there was still a sickness in the air. That night when George slept, a dream plagued him. He found himself rousing in the morning before the dawn. He pulled on his breeches and went over to a looking glass and a basin, and when he went to throw the water upon his face, he found oozing blisters, weeping with pus, an ochre color, and it astounded and horrified him to see the pussy blisters dripping in the mirror. When he reached up to touch one, a hole opened on his face. Ha! He woke, and over breakfast related the tale to his older brother, who laughed and said, "Worry not. Nothing like that will plague us here. We're in the tropics. It's warm. It vanquishes all illness." But on the next night, George dreamed again. This time, when he rose to go to the basin and looked into the glass, he found protruding up a needle, and he picked it up and noted on the end it dripped with that pustule oozing. On the needle, it moved his hand involuntarily. No! And it jabbed him in the arm, and he woke again and related the tale over breakfast. But again, his older brother said, "George, your dream life is too vivid. I believe the tropics have, well, provided a bit too much warmth for your head." But upon the third night, George again dreamed, and when he went to the basin and began to splash water on his face in the mirror, he saw the shimmering reflection of his elder brother, until a hand tore away the face, leaving a skull. When George related the tale again over breakfast, the elder brother again laughed. Years went by after George buried that brother, and named the place where he lived after part of the place where the brother had served. Vernon, Mount Vernon. And then came a trying time, one that created upheaval in the soul, and George found himself along the river that flowed both ways. In the desolate, dreary, and ghost-infested highlands. And there, he had to gather in men, and he endeavored to explain to them, you need to stay here. You need to let this surgeon and their assistants stick into those pussy poxes a needle and jab it into thine arm. And we can't let any of you go. For if the redcoats find out, they'll know we're under a quarantine. Well, many of the men rebelled and left the service, and the remaining men of George suffered the consequences. Attacks here and there. But George remained steadfast and held on against the pox which was upon them. And at length, not far from where Tompkins Corners is, closer to the Hudson River, why, stands a wooded place where once some of those men camped, and 60 of them died, and many more of them suffered from that pox. And not long ago, a friend of mine, going past the place where those men camped and endured and died from the pox, he drove betwixt and between, like now, the gloaming, the twilight, and there stepped into the middle of the road a figure, causing him to hit his brakes and look at his companion. And they looked out into the road, and there they saw the imploring, burning eyes of a figure clad like me, only with a frock coat cut in a soldier's form. And he waved out and pointed to his cheeks. And when those in the car looked, they saw the figure touch those cheeks. And then there burst forth pus and light. And then, once the figure had delivered the message, it vanished. And for the longest time, my friend refused to tell anyone. Then, at length, related it to me and wondered, storyteller, what story did this figure, this apparition, this ghost relate? I didn't know until these trying, viral times came upon us. 'Twas a spirit of an American soldier who died not from bullet wounds, but from the pox, a plague, a pandemic. Warning for us to take care of each other and ourselves. Thus, if we fail, they will become like that wandering soldier not far from here, supernatural and spooking spirit, joining the many along our mysterious Hudson River. And good friends, that's the tale true of George Washington. This has been a presentation by the Tompkins Corners Cultural Center. I'm Jonathan Kruk, your storyteller, Tom McCoy, your musician. Thanks to Linda Thornton, Judy Allen, and Andrea Sadler. Good night.